Hello all, welcome today to our 13th edition of Celto Live on 21st August. And I would like to welcome our today's guest with us, Mr. Niranjan Shivaram from Bangalore, the Audio Academy, well known, of course, as with being the co-founder of the Audio Academy. Welcome, Niranjan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Before we start, I just want to take a moment and just say that Mr. Moshe Aston, our country head, his mother is in the hospital. So sending out for all those all of you who are watching, please send across your prayers. His mother, it's a non-COVID thing, but she's had some other issues and stuff. So our prayers are with you, Moshe. We are missing you because you are an integral part of all our Celto lives, and we are missing your smiling, happy face. I'm sure Humayun is. So our prayers are with you. Niranjan, welcome to our 13th episode of Celto Live today on 21st August.
Thank you.
So please share with us your journey, that how did you get into this industry and how did you get into pro audio and into freelancing? Over to you.
Sure. Yeah. So it's, I would say like pretty much like anybody who got into the audio industry, it was never planned. It was always something that we're all passionate about. And we possibly just needed something to work in our favor. So essentially what worked in my favor was I was doing my engineering like any good South Indian boy. Followed what his parents said. And then it wasn't that interesting any longer. My mom kind of figured out that, you know what, okay, you're doing pretty decently, but are you really going to make a career out of this? I was like, no. She's like, what would you like to do? And I had no idea. But all I knew was I was interested in audio. I knew how to fix things because I had an electronics background. So like fixing amplifiers, speakers was what I used to do at home, make my own DIY stuff. And yeah, so the minute I got an opportunity where she said, you know what, you can quit your engineering and do what you want, I said, okay, let's try and get into the audio industry. That's pretty much where things shifted for me. Like a really funny story I have to tell everybody. Just like I went for my interview, right? The first job ever. I used to play basketball for my college, and I was supposed to meet Felix at Reynolds for my job, and I'm obviously running late because nothing really worked on time. And I sent my mom over and said, just make sure he waits for me.
He just make sure he
waits for me.
Waits for you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because that's literally how I got into the audio industry.
Okay. Very interesting. So you did your engineering. What year did you pass out?
So I dropped out of engineering and I would finish my engineering.
That's quite amazing that your mom let you drop out, because we come from that generation where the engineer, doctor, lawyer was still very predominant.
Very true.
Yeah. So to allow, engineer, doctor, lawyer, IAS, primarily these four things, and audio was considered to be like, are you sure? What is? So I'm a computer engineer by education, and I am from Pune University. But the first place I got in was actually Bangalore.
Nice. Okay.
I forget the name of the college now. It's been so long. So when I wanted to get into audio, because it was also a passion, it was kind of like, a little like audio, making it a passion is understood. Listening to music or doing all the DIYs and all, but really, can you, make it into a profession? Though, of course, today it's very different. And we'll come to that, because today you are training. I think you are a very integral part of the newcomers who are coming into the industry.
Yes, we're trying our best to ensure that the guys who get out of Audio Academy, guys and girls now, meet industry standards in a sense that they are ready to start working with companies, and they don't need to be trained as much as how things used to be earlier, because things are no longer just analog. Things are getting more complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in the day, we could all turn knobs and figure out what needs to be done.
True.
It no longer is the same thing, and there is a great need for to understand how things are done. And expectations are also a lot higher. The industry is growing, and the industry does expect a lot more. So we are really trying our level best to ensure that all the kids who finish at least realize what it takes to make it in the industry. It's not something that where they can just come have fun and go for a gig, but it is a serious job. Uh, Possibly nobody's going to appreciate what you do, but you will have to work really, really hard, and it will take time to make it. A lot of kids, I feel nowadays, believe that they just need to go stand right in front of the mixer. Uh, it really isn't the place that anybody needs to be. If you've got a really good band, any good mixer engineer is going to get a good mix out of it. So yeah, it's basically getting them to understand the fundamentals, doing things right, and everybody will get that opportunity in time to, I mean, specialize or follow exactly what they were intended to do.
So, okay. So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you because when in this industry started, it kind of, uh, I would say, yes, most people got into it because of passion. And maybe 20 years back, things were very different. As you said, yeah, there was pretty much knobs you could learn on the job, figuring out what each of the knobs did.
Yeah.
And I guess the systems are also much more simpler because you had regular, systems, the stackable systems, and it was pretty much point and fire. You took a double 15-inch or a single 15, whatever, put it on top of the bass and pointed it where the audience is, and I think that's how it pretty much worked when
Yes.
it started. But now, of course, with line arrays, more complex systems, softwares, of course, your mixing consoles are like, I think they are equivalent to aircraft cockpits in themselves. The amount
Actually, I honestly believe that's actually something that it's a good phrase to use to sell a product because it's just the same thing repeated 190 times.
what aircraft cockpit
No, consoles.
consoles.
Yeah, it's just one channel repeated 190 times, 200 times, or 400 times.
Yeah, but when you have so many of them and then you have to keep a track of everything, I think it gets pretty can
Yeah,
get
it
pretty
can. Yeah, I guess it is quite a daunting task when you have to manage that. And
yeah.
yeah, I guess it's more a memory game at that point in time.
I've seen. I mean, yeah, and as you said, absolutely, that's so true. The demands today are so much bigger in terms of mixing, in terms of from the mix engineer, from everything, from everybody.
Yeah.
They've got so much more complex. The gigs have got so much more complex. I mean, would you say that like even now smaller bands have started asking for a lot more things than they need actually?
Yeah, so I think a lot the smaller bands do ask for a lot more things than what they actually require. It's they do that essentially because they lack the experience.
Okay.
That's what I've kind of figured out so far. Uh, Even bands need help, so it's like experienced musicians will have to start training younger bands or giving them some kind of support to get them to understand what really has to happen. And I think that a fair amount of that is already happening in this country. Younger bands, younger musicians are being mentored quite well because you see a lot of these guys, at least when we do college shows nowadays, uh, we send our students from Audio Academy to work on college gigs. And I went for one of them last year, and I was quite surprised at how good the bands were. Uh, I mean, they knew exactly what they wanted on the monitors, which is even seasoned musicians take time to understand what they really need. Uh, so that way, yeah, I do see things really improving.
Okay. So coming back to you, so when was this when you started you said you for your first interviews started with Reynolds, right? With Felix.
Yeah, I started at Reynolds, I think in 2001, sometime in March.
Okay.
Worked there for a couple of years.
Okay.
Then quit, started freelancing.
Okay.
Then I think in 2008 or 9, I think it was 2008, I started consulting with Ansata
Okay.
for the Avid consoles for tech support.
Okay.
And I still continue doing tech support for Ansata. And then in 2012, we started Audio Academy.
Okay.
So
yeah.
my wife and I started it, and yeah, it's been she's a boss of Audio Academy, the one who keeps all of us in place. Otherwise, like
You have to
any
say
good,
that. You have to say that. Today we got the
no,
points. Ranjit, today you have got the points, buddy.
no, because no,
1 week, all Khoon Maaf. She's the boss. Perfect.
no, she knows that. I think I would have pretty much bought all the gear with the money that was available.
Okay.
we wouldn't be profitable or wouldn't have enough funds to grow. So
Okay.
she's kept all of us pretty much in check and made sure that, yeah, things work well. So I do the tech part primarily other than setting it up, but yeah, she's pretty much the guiding force.
She's the CEO.
She's the CEO, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much everybody who walks into Audio Academy knows she's the boss the minute they enter.
You know, I must tell you this. You are really spoken very, very, very highly about. And, you know, like when we were doing this and so, you know, when we started doing these lives in this extraordinary circumstances that we are in, we started with some webinars and stuff. And then we said, okay, what next? You know, so we started saying, okay, let's look at sharing people's journeys. So we started doing some product stuff, which we do on a tech talk. And then we started doing these Sell to Lives, where we share a person's journey, because we were like, getting across, you know, I think today what we all need is some level of positivity.
Very true.
Right? You know, in this current scenario, it's very easy to get bogged down with the current scenario. I mean, everybody's in it. It's not like one person has got it better than the other or something like that. Pretty much everybody is globally hit. So we said that let's start doing this. Let's start taking people's journeys and let's sharing them, because whose journey can influence whom or inspire whom, we don't know that.
Very true.
You know, like you said, and no, it's easier said than done, that, you know, somebody who's young, tell them you should know what you want to do, and it's not very easy. You know, frankly speaking, till my late 20s, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was still contemplating that audio computers, but like you said, passion. This is the single most common thing which everybody has said, that we got into it because of passion. And I personally feel that those of us who will stay back in this trade are the ones who are into it for passion.
Very true.
Because the ones who are not into it for passion, they will say, "Yaar, there's so many other things. Let's get out of this and let's figure out, you know, I can sell essential commodities or whatever." And look, let's face it, entertainment is the worst to be hit, because it was the first to stop and the last to start.
Very true.
So passion. So how did that happen? You know, freelancing, Avid. So as an Avid instructor, you certify. You were the one who primarily worked with and started to make the SC48 the way it was a rage in those days. I remember everybody was SC48. Suddenly, you know, the entire Yamaha landscape. That was a space which was primarily
it was the Yamaha M7CL completely.
M7CL and PM5D, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Then suddenly their SC48 came in the picture, and everybody was talking about it.
Yeah. So I think, I had a small part in it where I just had to essentially get the technical aspect of it across to all the engineers and get them to start understanding how it worked. So the idea was it was an easy console to use. So half the battle was won right there.
Okay.
It was just helping them when they were stuck. I think that was the most important thing. Any good engineer in a stressful situation, at times our minds just go blank. And if they call you at that moment in time, you need to be ready to help them with a solution. And I think that was the key. Training them first to give them the confidence that yes, they could do it. B, when they were in trouble, letting them know that, you know what, if you're in trouble, we're there to bail you out, don't worry. So that was primarily how we went about working. I went working on it.
But tell me, like, what I've seen in India, we are very fixed in our ways. I mean, I find it, because being in this industry for 20 years, I find it extremely difficult to, you know, the way people are trained to see things or look at things, they will continue doing that. So how did you make this shift, if I may ask, like, you know, because Yamaha was so popular at that time, everybody had it. It was all over. Now you bring in something. Was it the support? Was it the fact that Pro Tools was there, or what would you say was the single most important thing or things which enabled that wave of change to happen?
See, the change primarily happened. It was a really simple console to use. It sounded good. It had the bells and whistles of plugins and recording into Pro Tools. And the next part, they got the pricing right for it for India. And the support, I would say, was unparalleled. it was just amazing. The support was, I mean, things failed, you knew you'll get something ready and working the very next day. If as long as that was possible. So I think it was a combination of everything that made it work. It's not just one single aspect of just technical training. It's uh, I would primarily say, yeah, I think the support was so fantastic that you would have somebody there to help you out if you had an issue.
Okay, moment you got stuck, and training. I mean, that started before, obviously, right?
Yeah, the first thing was to start getting engineers trained, getting them going on shows, giving into them, being there with them. So if there was any issues, you were always there to assist them. In the initial days, yeah, things did go wrong because, yeah, like teething problems with anything that ever comes out first.
And especially software related.
Yeah, and once all those things were ironed out, it started getting really, really easy after that. Engineers took to it. Uh, I mean, they were able to make the show files come loaded. So there was some sense of comfort that they all had that made it a lot easier for
How
them.
did it reach there? So that's the thing. I mean, that of course happened. But initially when you tell somebody, okay, here, take this, try this. That initial barrier which is there in everybody's minds. Nahi yaar, I'm happy with that. I know that thing. Wo chalta hai na, it works with it. I mean,
So I think the trick over there is to just train them right and get them to understand. The most important thing was understanding their workflow. Everybody's workflow is slightly different. So when you start speaking to a person, what we used to do is we used to just take them through the way anybody would go and run a show. So the first thing was give them that confidence that yes, I can do it. It's not that complicated at all. And not go into the bells and whistles. We didn't try to say that, oh, it has this feature and it has this feature. Hey, you need to start a show. You need to do this. You need
how
to finish the
fast
show.
can you do it? How quickly?
How fast can you do it? How easy is it? Where do you find things? Once they got used to it, then they want to know what the bells and whistles were, and that's when they started getting really excited.
That's when you start getting them hooked onto the.
Yeah. The bells and whistles are later. The first thing is, I remember in Hyderabad, the first console that was sold, the SC48, which was sold in Hyderabad. I went there. What we used to do is I used to make show files for everybody. So if they had a gig the next day, they could literally take the console, finish the gig, and come back without me even being there.
Okay.
They were ready.
Okay.
So things like that is what really, really helped them gain that confidence. So they always knew they had a default show file. Whatever happens, start from there. So everything's going to work.
Worst case scenario, you are good to go. You're on autopilot sort of a thing with this thing, and you can. Okay.
Yeah, and everybody was just a call away. So.
Right. No, that's very interesting because like I said, shifting people's mindsets is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of time, So you guys did a good job on that, and
thank you.
So that is something which is you need to be given the credit for that, you and the team, of course. So tell me then, so freelancing and Avid certification, and then you said 2012, you said, right, that Audio Academy.
Audio Academy started, yeah.
Okay, so how did that come about? Like,
so that was essentially traveling all over the country. I kind of felt that there was no consistency in what was happening. People had their own ideas. People, it's about things the way they learn. There was no actual way of which things had to be done. Because in 2007, if I'm not mistaken, or 2005, I did a small short course from Mea Sound in Thailand. It was just a 7-day course and a 10-day program. I spent about 17 days totally. That pretty much changed my entire life. It was run by this guy called Eddie. It didn't make a difference to them which speaker you use, what brand you used. It was all about how things were done the right way. And I realized that I had learned doing so many things the wrong way. So it pretty much was like I had to reboot my entire learning from there. It was, I mean, the way I would put it is, yeah, they pinched me and brought me down to earth. So
okay, so it's not about what you do, but the way you do it. That's what
the way you do it, exactly. Like even if you need to put a chain into a chain bag when your hoist goes up, there's a particular method of doing it, which is a very logical method of doing it. I was like, hey, you know what? It's a chain. I've done this so many times on so many big gigs, worked with so many international artists. I'll do it. I started putting the chain in, and they go like, hey, you know what? This is exactly the way you don't do it. And I was like, but I've been doing it for so many years, and it's been working. And people need to realize that, you know what? Yeah, you can be doing it for 20 years. it might not be the right way. You might get away with it, but there is a more efficient way of doing things.
Very interesting, because this is something I've come to realize. Like, my other audio is my one passion, the other is automobiles. I've kind of seen in India the training was जैसे उस्ताद ने सिखाया ना.
Correct.
So if the ustad taught somebody to do it in a particular way, the guy was doing it blindfoldedly in that way. And
Very
as you
well.
absolutely said, that whether that's the right way or the wrong way is immaterial to him.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why that's happened is because of lack of training. Because there wasn't anybody. And this is where we changed. For example, when the Hondas and Toyotas came in, they took their engineers and they are the same level of workers, who we call engineers, of course, in a auto workshop or whatever, and they trained them that this is how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So very interesting. So this Meyer Sound thing changed your way of looking at things.
Yeah, because it wasn't just a Meyer Sound course. It was sold as a Meyer Sound course, but we had sold as a Meyer Sound course, because you had the guys coming down from Meyer Sound, but we also had rigging instructors who have done Dark Side of the Moon for Pink Floyd.
Oh, okay.
Rigging for that. So we had rigging instructors on there. The biggest engineers possible were there.
Okay.
And for them, it was like getting things right. So we pretty much used to sleep at maybe 12:30, 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
Right.
But you'll get a phone call at 6 in the morning.
Okay.
To wake up and head to training, because that's how the live sound industry is.
Right. You start early in the morning.
And if you can't do it when there is no pressure, how are you ever going to do it in the real world?
Right.
So that kind of pretty much changed the way I did things. I tried to start, at least for myself, I can't change others, but start doing things better when I worked. Started doing that. And then I eventually said, you know what? Okay, let me just give it a shot. Let me try and start something and start teaching people. Because I was doing the Avid certification part, and I figured out I could communicate well, because it's a huge difference being a good engineer versus being a good teacher.
True.
I realized I had the capability of communicating things in a slightly easy way. Might not be the best way, but in a way that people understand. That gave me the idea, saying that, you know what, let's try and start a school, start it small, let us see where it goes. And post that, it's just been growing.
Wow, lovely. Yeah, because it's very well said. To teach something, to do something and to teach it are two different things. It's not necessarily if you're good at one, you can be good at the other.
Yeah.
Okay. So it started with how many, and where did it start, and where is it today? Tell us about that.
We started with one student.
Okay.
The interesting fact is
not your wife, huh?
No, not at all. So we had one guy come in. He's doing really well. He works with Yamaha now.
Okay.
So he does all the technical for PA and consoles now. Yeah, but when the cool part is when he actually came in, there was nothing in the school. We didn't even have a printer to give his dad and mom a receipt for the fees paid.
Okay.
He saw analog Midas console in a flight case. It wasn't even opened.
No.
We didn't even have enough chairs and tables.
Okay. The Venice?
We had
the Midas Venice?
We had the Verona.
Verona, okay.
Verona, yeah. 48 channel Verona.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all we had. We didn't even have PA. We didn't have anything. But that guy was like, you know what? No, I want to learn from you guys. I have seen you work at shows. So I want to learn from you. I said, okay, fine, come. So that's how we started. Our first batch was just 2 guys. Then in the next batch, we had 5. But then we realized that what we would always like to do is keep the number of students in any batch not more than 7 to 10. So our biggest batch ever is 10.
Okay, so you have only 10 students per batch, huh?
Yeah.
And
we have batches quite frequently.
Okay.
We start batches every 2 or 3 months. But in a batch, so if somebody is actually teaching somebody, it's not going to be more than 10 guys or girls in a batch.
Okay, so you have every 2 or 3 months. So the batches run concurrently, I'm assuming that means.
Yes.
Okay. And how long is do you have multiple courses, or what is it, like single course?
It's a 1-year diploma course.
Okay.
Where the fundamentals of audio, which is up in the 5th module, is common for all students. And then they get to decide if they want to specialize in live sound, studio sound, or they want to get into music production.
Okay.
So we always tell them, don't try to do all 3. You can't be a neurosurgeon and a cardiac surgeon at the same time. You need to choose.
Right. Very true. Yeah, because in our case, the way it happens so far, the way today most of the live sound engineers pretty much came from the studio. I mean, they were started working in the studio, and that natural progression happened where they were working with bands, and then the band started touring, and they said that, why don't you tour with us? I mean, that's what's happened in right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
because once you go into live sound, you want to become a system engineer. Or sometimes not everybody wants to be a mix engineer, and that's a totally different set of skills that you need. So we always tell them, you know what, decide what you want to do and pursue. Figure out what's going to make you happy, because that's the only thing that's going to take you to work after a long, tired few
yeah.
days or months.
So tell me, the kids you have coming in today, what is it? What drives them to come and start? What is the primary motivation?
The first motivation for them is passion. The
Okay.
second biggest thing we've noticed is a lot of kids think it's cool, because they think it's a cool job or whatever it is. So we have a very simple process of eliminating those students and telling them it's not what they should be doing. By we just tell them, you know what, you won't make enough of money. We'll tell the parents they will get married very late in life, and we tell the kids, you know what, you're not going to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Now you decide. And on weekends when you're working, your friends are going to be
Your friends
partying.
partying. Okay.
So now you decide, is this the life for you?
So you have a lot of females also joining in to become like.
Not too many, but we have had girls come in,
Okay, very
and
interesting.
a couple of them are really really good.
Okay, very nice. So is it like a choice that where somebody thinks that, let me, maybe starts off as a DJ or is into some form of music, and then from there they feel that, okay, now let me go to the next level and become a live sound engineer or something?
No, actually, for us, we've not had anybody who's been a DJ join the course.
Okay.
The most number of students who have joined us have been students who have finished their engineering or their degrees,
Okay.
uh, and they've told their parents, "Listen, here's your certificate. Now I'm going to do what I want to do."
Wow. So you're saying most of the people who have joined you are finishing
Engineers,
their 4-year engineering degree.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They've actually
That's
finished,
incredible.
and they've told their parents, "This is your certificate. Now I'm going to do what I want to do." So we do get a lot of students who know what they actually want by the time they come in. Yeah, we do have those guys who think it's a cool job, and we outright tell them that, you know what, don't waste your time. Money is fine, you'll make it in life, but don't waste your time. Pursue something that really makes you happy.
Yeah, because it's not easy. Like you said, of course, the boyfriend girlfriend part is a separate thing, but kind of live sound engineer has pretty much no life.
Yeah,
Timings are erratic. Traveling is crazy. I
yeah,
mean, Samir is a dear friend, and
yeah,
when I mean, I know the fact that when if it wasn't for a situation like this, he didn't know where he'd be tomorrow or day after. He said, I always had a suitcase packed ready.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's the same case for anybody who's like, uh, doing well and stuff. The amount of travel
Yeah.
which is there is
It's crazy. You. I mean, I've come back. I've got fresh clothes from the. I've got my wife to come to the airport and give me fresh clothes.
really, because
Yeah,
you've taken a flight from a flight, huh?
yeah.
Airport.
Just give me clothes. I need clothes.
Yeah, and it's not easy for the family because they get to see you very little erratic, especially when you have small kids and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You know, so you really need to have that dedication, I guess. And as you said previously, the industry is becoming more and more demanding.
yeah,
Bands or whatever it is, the gigs are getting bigger, more complex.
yeah.
True. So you have a lot of people from out of town also.
Most of our students are from out of town. We get
Really?
very few students from Bangalore. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Well,
we get students from all over the country. We get students from Sri Lanka. We actually had a student from Egypt.
you had a student from Egypt.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah. So
incredible.
yeah, so we are getting people are slowly figuring out that we do exist in India. India is a good place to come, and we can offer the quality. I strongly do believe in India we can do a much better job than what people do elsewhere in the world, for this one simple reason: because of the limitations that we have in this country. We don't have it easy. Things are not convenient or planned for things to be done that we have to keep understanding things, improving, and get things done. So yeah, I think India is a perfect place for anybody to learn.
Well, very well said. I mean, it's like if somebody can drive in India, they can pretty much drive anywhere else in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, here, whereas it's vice, if somebody is who knows how to drive in Europe or US, put him on any road in India, he'll go crazy.
Yeah.
I've had people sitting with me and going like this, or I'm like, don't worry, this is how it works here. And I've had principals or some people come, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Right. So
So India, I truly believe, and India is growing. This industry is growing. Except for this period, the industry was growing quite significantly.
what are some of the challenge while doing this and training? What are some of the key challenges you guys have faced?
So the challenges we face is basically students. It's basically how the education system in the country works. You just study to get marks, not really understand what you're doing. So to even do a course, if you just have sufficient knowledge up to your 10th standard, it's more than enough. We'll take care of everything from there. We literally start teaching from basics like speed is equal to distance over time, and how do you cross multiply, because kids forget it.
Yeah.
You have your phone, you just start using a thing. So that's been quite a challenge for us, because a lot of them forget their fundamentals, which is required in audio engineering.
Right.
Because since we primarily focus on the technical aspect of it more than the creative aspect, because we would like them to showcase their creativity. We can guide them, but we don't want to force our creativity upon them and say, you know what, this is the way it should be done.
But where would you, I mean, sorry, but just like to, where would you need cross multiplying as a sound engineer? I'm just on top of my head.
So basically, if you want to calculate comb filtering between two sources,
Okay.
you need to know the distance, and you need to do things quite quickly. Or even if you want to just figure out the time period of something,
Okay.
or the wavelength of something, some very basics. How do you place your subwoofers? Rather than using a software to calculate it, you can actually get your calculations really simple and even place it in your software. So stuff like that. And once you get a basic understanding of audio, you can then start figuring out other things that can be done. So that's the whole purpose why we try to stick on fundamentals. We do electronics so that a guy can hopefully understand if something's gone bad, if they can fix it, or they at least need to send it to the service guy.
Very fantastic. I mean, that's really incredible, yeah. And you're teaching from this level. That's
Yeah,
really...
yeah. The basics. I mean, we make students make microphones with paper, with cups, because the fundamentals of a microphone are the same, and it has to work.
Wow, incredible.
So we give them like, you have $150 budget. This has to be done in that.
You have to do it. You know, this picture which you see behind.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a 2,500 seat auditorium.
Okay.
And it previously had a line array installed in it. And Karthik, you could just just rewind the thing and just go to the pictures of this again. If it's okay, so this is a JP auditorium. Just to reiterate what you're saying, precisely what you're saying. So this is Karthik, by the way.
Hi, Karthik.
He's our system engineer for Celto. He was about to come and join you, by the way.
Nice.
That's what he told me when he asked, Niranjan from Bangalore Audio Academy. I was thinking of going, I was going to go there. So anyway, so it's a 2.5, just take a little more behind. So there was a line array which was installed and it didn't work. And what while going about the design factor for designing the system for this, we didn't use any software, nothing. We just used the simple basics. And exactly what you said, if you look at things from the foundation standpoint, if you understand, I mean, I'm just talking about designing sound for a venue right now. The basics, if they are not clear, you can do whatever you want. You can, you can take the best product from the best manufacturer, and it will be a disaster.
Very true.
This is what I have primarily seen in my career in audio. I mean, we do installations, we do other things, we sell equipment. It's about understanding that product, understanding the space, and it's something which I have also learned over the years. After
Yeah.
doing more and more difficult things. This was the 2,500 seater auditorium, which had a line array. It never, for 8 years, the client was unhappy, didn't get sound. Went in there, kind of understood the space, that what is the basic problem. The problem is not the line array. Problem is you didn't need a line array because you didn't need that dispersion or the throw.
Yeah.
The width, the depth of the auditorium is not too much. It's maybe about 50 feet or something, but it's wide, very wide. The second thing is it has so many under balcony areas or things like that, which kind of needed coverage. Now, if you don't put the right fills and then delay them with the main, I mean, just a basic thing. So we put in a basic system. We didn't put we removed the line array, put a normal 15-inch and the fills and delayed them properly. And today the place is up and running. Even when they have people when they do big things and the people go beyond the 2,500 seating capacity to 3,000 people, it works. So just coming to what you said, the basics, if the basics aren't right, you can do whatever you want. You can put all the smarts you want and everything you want, and you're just going to make a mess of it. And I kind of see that happening more and more.
So what I feel is people don't realize technology is a tool to help you improve things. They start using technology as the solution and not as a tool. That's where the real issues lie.
Yeah, absolutely. No wonder you've spoken so highly of Navneet, because Sahaj just came back from finishing his course some time back.
Yeah.
And Navneet really spoke very highly of you.
Yeah, and no, we truly try to get the fundamentals in. You don't need to know some big jargon or something to understand or to just show off. It really doesn't help you. At some point in time, people are going to call you and say that, you know what, you don't know enough. Once they have the fundamentals with enough of experience, everybody will start understanding how to do things right.
Right, and then you build on that. I mean, as you as you work and you do more experience, you gain experience, you build on that.
Yeah, it's basically the foundation of a house or a building, a weak foundation, and then it's going to fall at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. So do you, where from here now? I mean, it maybe pan India or something, and the fact that you're having people coming down from Egypt and stuff.
I think we will just pretty much stick only in Bangalore because it's very difficult to train faculty and get the right faculty.
So how do you do that? Do you have the faculties like it's again from Bangalore itself, or what is it?
No, surprisingly, our faculty, both the guys who worked with us were in Chennai earlier, in Madras, and then they were in Bangalore. And then I asked them if they would like to work with us. It's basically all we need. Again, so when it comes to faculty, they need to have that skill to teach. They could be, both of them are really good engineers. The guy who works in the studio is a fantastic studio engineer, does a lot of work. Ashwin, who's a live sound engineer, tours a lot with bands. But they also do have the skill to teach and get people to understand how things work. So I think that's pretty much the key thing. And then over time, they start understanding how kids will learn. Because you can ask any student who comes to Audio Academy, no two classes are the same. We actually start tailoring our classes for them.
Okay. You tailor your classes based on the batch.
Yeah, exactly. Because some guys are going to learn fast, some students are going to learn slow. So we might change things around. We might add some more topics or remove some of the things we want to talk about, but still make sure that they learn everything, or just completely teach things in a different way. It's a very important thing to be able to do that. So getting people to understand that, and that this is a method to teach and training them to do that, because I mean, both Ashwin and Gautam took a fair amount of time. They've been with us for a while. But it took them a year and a half to actually get into it, and to start trying to replicate that all over the country gets really difficult. It's easier to just have it to one place. Yeah, our numbers will be low, which we are completely okay with, but at least we are assured of quality.
Correct. And so do you also teach that, or like, I mean, you take some of the classes, or what? How is it?
Yeah. So we split the classes. I don't take a lot of them because Ashwin and Gautam are pretty much completely hands-on. I fill in for them. I manage admin now. But all the short courses, when it comes to a systems design course or something specific, I pretty much do that.
Okay. Systems design course. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's
and we also have a course on acoustics that we do only if somebody has finished our systems course
so
or done it.
how many courses do you have?
So we have our main program, which is a 1-year program,
Hmm.
diploma course in audio engineering. In
Hmm.
addition to that, we have what we call as customized courses. So say somebody wants to learn something in particular,
Hmm.
we'll tailor make the course for that period of time. Say somebody says, I have just a month.
Hmm.
What can I learn in a month? So we'll say, okay, what experience do you have? And if they don't have any experience, then we'll say, you know what, in a month, we can only take you to this level. We will not promise you that you're going to be able to do X, Y, Z, but we'll make sure that X amount of your fundamentals are taken care of and give you an overview of something else.
So then that would be a customized thing for that person itself.
Yeah, it's just for the one person. We also do a 3-day systems program where we have two methods to do it. One, we do it as one-on-one with people, because some people would just like to be the only one in the class. Or we do it in batches of about 8 to 10 people, which we do only twice a year. We don't do it more than that.
Okay.
But then after that, it's all just one-on-one as far as possible, the customized course. So we have students doing it for 3 months, 2 months. People from rental companies saying that, you know what, I'll just do possibly a 10-day or 15-day thing. Just teach me about my basics. I've been doing it long enough, but just tell me, or I'll tell you what my problems are. Can you help me solve them?
Oh, fantastic. So I understand this. You can only do this if you're small, frankly. I mean, if you're limited,
Yeah,
because you cannot do this kind of a thing if tomorrow you start doing it. I understand now. Yeah. Then
yeah.
it.
So it just becomes, so this is our whole aim. So we were looking at expanding, but then we realized that the quality would suffer, and we said the whole reason we started this would be lost.
Okay. Tell me one more thing. One thing, Niranjan. I mean, have you found this that there is system engineering, there is sound engineering. They're kind of two very different things. One is handling a mixer, one is setting up a PA.
Yeah,
These are pretty much kind of people don't actually understand the difference between the two. Most of the sound engineers are pretty much into the mixer and understand the mixer and full stop.
yeah.
Because I have seen this. I mean, is that correct?
That's completely correct. So what I always say is that a mix engineer who's mixing for a band is more like the artist. He doesn't have to worry about the rest of it. A systems engineer is a guy who's supposed to take care of the technical aspects of it.
But more so, very few people understand also the system engineer is required. They think, oh, like a mix engineer has come. I mean, even in so many cases, there are, unless it's very big, this thing, where is there a system engineer separate and a mix engineer separate? The mix engineer is kind of supposed to be the do all end all.
Yeah. So I think that will take time to come in once mix engineers start realizing, once mix engineers actually experience having a system engineer with them and realize how things turn out. Once they do that, I'm quite certain they'll figure out the economics of it with their band or the organizers or promoters or whoever it is to ensure that system engineers are brought in.
But why is it? Because is it because the mix engineer feels that he is primarily responsible for the band and what's on stage, and whatever is for the main PA crowd is not really his this thing. What is the reason for this kind of a thing? You know?
I think the engineer has to realize that he has to concentrate really on what he needs to get out from the band, what the band's expectations are on PA. And a systems engineer job primarily would be then to ensure whatever comes out from the mixers, what's coming out on the speakers. He doesn't have to make a system sound fantastic. He has to get the system to sound the same for everybody in the audience because they're all playing equally. And it doesn't have to be, it depends on the mix. If the mix engineer wants to get a bad mix out and make it sound a particular way, the system has to respond to it accordingly. I think mix engineers have to start understanding that. And the economics of it definitely have to start working out.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, of course, now at least I think for bigger shows, we've gone to the point of a mix engineer and a FOH engineer, which I think itself is a very big thing.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Because
it is improving. It's definitely improving. The bigger companies already know that it is a requirement. They already have it in place. It's primarily the smaller guys who are finding a tough time because it's not possible for them to employ a mixed engineer as well as a system engineer. It just doesn't work out for them. So yeah, I guess for smaller guys, the mix engineer will have to start wearing the hat of a systems engineer and start understanding how things happen, because it is two, as you said, two completely different things.
Two completely different things. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's you just have to forget that you're a mix engineer when you're doing systems, and when you're doing systems, forget you're a mix engineer.
but I kind of found that the mix engineer is pretty much just bothered about his mixer, his this stuff, his not getting just in not having feedback issues and stuff, and whatever's coming out of the main PA is fine. I mean, the main PA is
Yeah,
so
irrelevant. It's just like some sound is coming, great.
whatever is coming out of it is, and I kind of like this thing that if that is not looked into, then how is it how is it complete? But that's fine, because I kind of course, for even medium scale shows, the amount of effort which goes in from a mix engineer's point of view is a lot, and
Yeah.
the amount of stress he's under is also is a lot.
True.
Right. So yeah, sorry.
Rental companies also have to be able to support them at that point in time. So it's a huge chain where everybody has to be able to get things to work together.
Correct. Yeah, that's true, because I think a lot of rental companies primarily rely on just a basic preset which comes, and this is what every manufacturer says. The preset is just the starting point; it's not the end point.
Yeah.
Without that, somebody understanding what to do from there, you cannot get that to happen.
Very true.
And so you of course have mix engineering, system engineering, and then customized courses as well.
Yes. Yeah. And we also have a full-fledged studio program.
Also.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole thing is what, 9 months, 10 months?
10 months with a 2-month internship.
Okay.
Pretty much the idea of the internship is we'll send them, if they finish that course successfully, because we are quite rigid on how we conduct our exams. It's primarily the practical aspect of it. And the practicals is more what's expected when you work in the industry.
I heard that not everyone passes.
Not everybody passes. Not everybody passes. Unfortunately, it's not that they're not good. It's just that at that point in time, they haven't realized what it takes to work in this industry.
And what is the most important thing in that?
Fundamentals. We just catch them on the fundamentals, and we do put them under stress. It's not that, here's 45 minutes. You need to do this. No, it's 45 minutes. And in the real world, people are going to be talking to you. People are going to be shouting. And a lot of other things are going to be happening around you. Work.
Yeah.
Solve the problems, fix issues.
Keep your calm. And 10 different people coming and telling you, doing it 10 different ways.
Yeah.
Somebody will say, aise kar do, somebody will say, vaise kar do, somebody will say, do this. Now what do you do?
Yeah. So it's basically, if students can handle that, then they're ready to work in the industry.
So the 2 months internship is you send them in Bangalore for various live shows and stuff?
No. So during the course, they have to finish 40 shows during the course.
Sorry?
They have to finish 40 shows during the course, which we send them out for.
Okay.
To be eligible to write the final exam.
Oh, okay. So they have to do 40. So which are these 40 shows? These are like regular shows which are happening and stuff.
We send them out to regular rental companies.
Okay.
So from doing international acts to working with Indian Bollywood acts to doing corporate events to handling even one mic or doing background music, we send them out on shows with different rental companies, and they'll decide, depending on how good they think the student is, they'll give them their responsibilities accordingly.
Okay.
Post that is when they come for the exam. The internship is not in the typical term an internship, but rather an opportunity for a student to go work with an actual company for a period of time and to get accustomed to and see if they like working over there.
Okay.
So we always send them to a company where they're looking to hire people.
Okay. So, but then is the internship could be outside Bangalore also? Is it only
outside Bangalore?
Oh,
or
so
anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the country.
Okay. But if, let's say, somebody is from Delhi, would you send them for internship to Delhi or maybe somewhere else also?
It's up to them. They can tell us if they want to go back home or they are okay. Because a lot of people, the idea of sending them for an internship is after that, they at least work in a company for 2 years. Otherwise, it's not beneficial for anybody.
Correct.
Because the company will also invest X amount of training the new people who come in. So nothing should be essentially taken for granted.
Okay. So it's the internship is with a company where they might then probably will work for some
Continue,
period of
yes.
time. Oh,
Yes, yes.
that's fantastic. So that gets them also a kind of a start in their
In the
career.
industry. And that's why it's so important for them to be able to finish our exam, because we are confident that, you know what, we send you to a company, we know you're ready to start working with them.
Right. Right. You know, a lot of people talk about education. What is really commendable is you're doing something about it. You're actually doing that. That's what is.
Thank you.
Because we, in all our sessions, we've been, education, teaching, but it's easier said than done than to actually sit and impart that thing. And you're doing that.
Yeah.
So I really congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any final thing you would like to, in the current scenario we're in, what would you like to send across message to young, medium, old, whomever, that, what would you like to say to them as your message?
This is the time to get your fundamentals right.
Okay, good.
This is the time. Because once everybody is back to work, we're all going to be rusty at what we're doing.
Correct.
We are going to, the guys with experience will rely on their experience. Everybody's going to have the first show, which might be a little difficult, but yeah, as long as we get our fundamentals right, we're all going to be fine.
Absolutely, very true. Tell me one thing about because since you're training actually hands-on and in this proper way with these with the foundation and thing, what is your thoughts on all during this extraordinary time, the huge amount of webinars which have taken place? Just what are your thoughts on?
I think the webinars are a really good thing that have happened, as long as people have their fundamentals in place. Because some of the webinars, if you actually listen to them, are extraordinary. They're really, really good. But if people have shaky foundations, then it just becomes a marketing tool, nothing more than that. And it's very easy to get carried away by that. So I do believe that a lot of good has been done, but an equal amount of harm also might result from so many webinars.
Okay, so basically half knowledge. If that's what you're saying, huh?
Possibly. There are people who have definitely benefited from that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Definitely, of course.
I'm certain, but a lot of people will just get that half-baked knowledge and say, you know what, on the webinar, they said this exactly like what you were saying. He told me to do it this way, so I'm going to do it this way now.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand what you're saying. And, there's this thing about doing things the right way. This is something I am taking back from today, because this is very, very important. That there is a way we do it, but it's not necessarily the right way of doing it.
Exactly.
And this is something which goes for life also,
Very true.
Just
Very true.
We do something a particular way, it doesn't mean it's the right way of doing it. And this is, I think you can center so much around this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Niranjan.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely having a chat.
Yes, it was, absolutely. And let's hope and pray things get better and faster soon. And by the way, your classes are still going on, or what? Like how
we are doing our classes online as much as we can.
Okay.
But yeah, we need the kids to come back. We need permission from the government to open to get their hands on, because there's only so much you can do theoretically.
There's only so much you can do. I mean, online.
We're doing multiple camera setups and all that, but we do honestly know that they need to come back.
Yeah,
because they're not going to be doing it in theory in real life.
Absolutely. There's something and there is something else about the human-to-human interaction. I think that's what we've kind of all realized, because we've all become Zoom experts in this lockdown. We've become, things we didn't know about Zoom, we've suddenly all become this thing. But yeah, the human-to-human interaction is what has primarily been missed.
Yeah, very true.
But at least it's getting us to spend time with each other in this way, at least, and sharing ideas and things and getting those across to people.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree with that.
Great. So Niranjan, look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Definitely.
Keep up the great work, and teaching and training and stuff, and teaching young people how to do things the right way. And it is definitely going to help the industry and those young people.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
And see you soon. Take care. And everybody else online, take care. And see you soon when the industry opens.
Yep.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye.